What up, Wizards? It's Dev from The Place. We are 24 hours into Avatar: The Last Airbender Standard, and I am still not sick of any of these cards. Imagine that. Except for maybe the Owl. I've seen a lot of the Owl already, but for the most part, I'm still in a headspace where I'm like, brew this set instead of screw this set. So let's take advantage of that and look at all the decks I am building in Avatar Standard.
And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech.
Cotton candy, sweet as gold. Let me see that Tootsie Roll. Hey everybody, you're back. We were doing a thing. I got a lot of decks that I'm working on right now, and I'm probably not going to be able to do every single one of them this season. So if any of these decks look interesting to you, you can pop on over to that Patreon, link in the description. You'll probably have to paste it into your address bar. I apologize. But for just $1 a month, you can choose what decks we do this season. So if you want to see any of these over the others, because I can't do them all it's going to cost is $1 a month to vote, and your vote can definitely count. But anyway, let's go ahead and get on to it, because there's a lot of cards in Avatar that I think might be really good in Standard, like shake up the whole format for better or worse kind of good. I think that above all of them, the one that I think might have the most effect is Badger Mole Cub. That's right, we're already in the first deck, y'all. Badger Mole Ramp, no matter what form it takes, is probably going to be one of the better decks in the format. Now, the Badger Mole is pretty killable, and there's a lot of removal going around, so this one could end up being a bust, but in the early days of the season, we're seeing some promising results already from this card. Not only did everybody rant and rave about it after the streamer event, which kind of doesn't count when you think about what that format is really like. Everyone's trying new cards and stuff, and you just bounce new cards off of each other. It's real easy to get the wrong impression, but that said, this has already shown up in a couple of results day one of the format on MTGO. Now, who knows if it's going to continue to post results, but so far, again, things look pretty good for the little guy, and that's because he's broken. Because he's just obviously super broken, man. Anytime you tap a thing for mana, a creature specifically, it makes double that. So that counts with your Llanowar Elves, first and foremost, but it also counts with the land that you earthbend when this comes into play. Any other lands you happen to earthbend, sure, jump in the pool. And apart from that, you've got a bunch of 2 and 3 mana dorks that'll also create mana for you. So there's a lot of ways to get like 7 mana very easily, not Magic Christmas Land, not going to Disneyland situation. You just play like a Llanowar Elves turn 1, this turn 2, untap on turn 3 with 7 mana if nobody died. So that seems pretty crazy to me. A Vault-Born Tyrant on turn 3 is a real possibility in this Standard, and it's not like you had to play a 5-card combo to do that or anything. Also kind of interested to see what this card can do with Ouroboros in the lineup, because let's say you don't want to spend like 7 mana on one guy on turn 3. Well, if you get your 7 mana on turn 3, you can just go like creature Ouroboros, and now you've got a Llanowar Elves, presumably, you've got an Earthbent land, you've got the Badger Mole Cub, you've got a creature, random guy, and you've got an Ouroboros. So what is that, like 5 things that you can throw counters onto on turn 3, and it's not even that hard. And probably the best thing about that is you don't have to play like 7 drops in your curve. You can just play actual stuff on curve and just do the craziest crap you've ever seen in the world. But there's still plenty of sweepers that might stop you in Standard, but if they don't have specifically sweeper, you're probably just going to kill them with that setup. But apart from that, the card that I think this might be best with in Standard is actually a card from Avatar. And that's another one that I'm interested in building decks around. It's Wan Shi Tong. Now, I'm not moving on to another deck or anything. I just think that some sort of Simic Badger Mole with Wan Shi Tong at the top of the curve could probably be good enough to post some results. And again, the early results kind of prove that out, because one of the decks at 5-0'd League just this morning was a deck with 4 Badger Mole Cub and 4 Wan Shi Tong. So I don't know, there's probably something there. Anytime you can untap with 7 mana, and in the wildest of scenarios, you have like 10 mana on turn 3. And again, those aren't even that hard to envision. Then suddenly you got yourself a crazy Magic card. We saw them reprint Rampant Growth in this set. We saw them reprint a version of Harrow in this set. And we're like, where's all this good ramp coming from? Well, it's because this card exists. And so you won't be caught dead playing those other cards. That's not true. Those are still pretty good cards. But, I think that they are both outclassed by a thing like Badger Mole, which is high risk, high reward. It could die, and it's going to suck if it gets zapped. But if it doesn't get zapped, you win the game. So this is a crazy removal check that I don't think every opponent's going to pass every time. So I want to see how good this actually is in Standard. But now we are going to move on to the next deck here, and this is probably the deck that honestly most deserves to be a deck we do on stream for Dank Jank or something like that, more than it deserves to be a deck tech. But it's also kind of the deck that I'm most excited about. And those two things, you'd be surprised how often they are not mutually exclusive. I really like stupid decks. And that said, even though this one looks silly, I think there's something to it. This is my Scornful Striker deck, because this is kind of one of the cards I'm most jacked about in the set. And I do think this is a wild card. But What actual shell to put this thing in? Well, I think that mono black is probably halfway decent. And I think black red is really good, especially with some of the other legends we got in the set. But the thing I've been rocking out with lately is a Golgari shell. And for the first like 12 hours of standard so far, it's been doing pretty well. You go Golgari so that you have more creature selection, because this is a legendary creatures matter deck. I am playing Tiny Bones Joins Up in the 1-drop slot, along with a couple of other good 1-drops. You know, we got Tiny Bones himself and Cecil the Dark Knight. So that is a lot of good 1-drops for this deck to go ahead and get on board. But Mai gives us an amazing 2-drop. And we didn't really have a whole lot of amazing 2-drops before. You know, like Bristly Bill is another good reason to go green. Fantastic magic card there. And even has a decent activated ability if we go late. But Mai gives us a 2-drop that we didn't have access to before that'll really punish our opponent and kind of aid our game plan, because we're not playing too many non-creatures anyway. And in the 3-drop slot, you get Surik, another good reason to go green. Craven, another good reason to go green. It's a good deck if you had green, so I'm rolling with that so far. But either way, this is just kind of a Golgari mid-range deck that's way more weighted towards creatures than your average Golgari mid-range deck. And so far, it's been a blast, and people have no idea how to deal with Mai other than point a removal spell at it. But that's a better creature they're not pointing a removal spell at, and they're still taking 2 damage if they do it. And if they do try to take out something more important, they're going to take more than a couple of damage. This kind of gives all your creatures ward to, you know, pay 2 life, but it's even better than that. You know, this stops them from playing, well, not stops them from playing, but punishes them from playing like artifacts and enchantments and planeswalkers. And there's a lot of that going around. So just a crazy good magic card that's been serving me well so far this season. And I know it hasn't been too long yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be playing this not just for the rest of the season, but maybe for the rest of my life. This card has been great so far. Next deck is 5-color allies, which I figured I'd put on the Patreon poll just because, you know, got to be a 5-color allies deck on the Patreon poll, but I wasn't too excited about building it. I wasn't sure how good it was going to be, but lo and behold, I wake up this morning, there's been a standard challenge, and 5-color allies is placed 10th in that challenge. So not top 8, but still a pretty decent result for a brand new deck. And there are good things to be excited about in the deck. You know, Earth and Ally looks like a strong 1-drop for a deck like this with some decent relevance in the late game. Earth King's Lieutenant looks like the actual glue that holds the entire deck together, like best creature in the deck, I'm presuming. Haven't seen it in action yet, but the thing looks like a horse. Apart from that, you've got Katara if you want her, because there are a number of good activated abilities or triggered abilities to re-trigger, not the least of which is, you know, Earth King's Lieutenant. That's a good interaction. And probably one of the sleeperiest of all of these, which is Wartime Protesters. I actually think this is a really, really good top end for the Allies deck. Not only having haste itself, but giving a power boost and haste to every creature that you play from then on out for the rest of the game. Yeah, it actually seems like it's probably worth it to me. So maybe Allies does have some secret juice. And again, with some promising results today, who's to say it's not the best aggro deck in the format? It probably isn't. Like Mono Red is still out there. It got a bunch of challenge results today, but still, you know, there might be something to this if we can find exactly the right build. But next deck is Momo, Skies, baby. And there's a very important distinction here, because I think that the Golgari Mai deck was the one I was most excited to build, whereas this is the one I was most excited to play with. Again, very light distinctions, but very important ones. I've been actually messing around with this one the most today as the set came out, and it has done some wild stuff, baby, to the point where I'm not really sure exactly how you're supposed to build this thing, because I've tried a few different ways, and they're all really, really fun. I'm not sure which one is the best. And by the way, quick correction, you can't go double deep Cavern Bat on turn 2 with this. I think I said that in the video the other day. You can't do that. But one thing you can do that I had kind of misjudged is that, let's say you're playing Momo on turn 2. Well, you get some cost reduction even though you've already played a flyer this turn, because it doesn't care if you played a flyer. It cares if you played a non-lemur flyer. So you can play Momo on 2 and then a 2-drop right after. And that has been really good a few times, and I wanted to bring that line up because I haven't done that yet. But you can do some wild stuff with this. On turn 2, you can say play Quantum Riddler for a single mana with Warp, and then Splash Portal it if that's what you feel like doing. But we've also got Empyrean Eagle, which is now worthy of coming down on turn 2. We've got another 2-drop, what is it, Air Nomad's Legacy or something, a 2-drop enchantment that buffs flyers in this set. Goes really well in this deck. Want to try that thing out too? Already have. It's really good. But apart from that, Steam Core Scholar can come down on turn 2. That's insane. There's just a lot of really, really good lines with this. One way or the other, there is a lot of things that this card can do starting relatively early in the game. And I've said this before, but I just want to reiterate, it's kind of like a flying Llanowar Elves that attacks for 2. That is a punch in the face. This might even make seemingly decent stuff like Spider Woman Uncommon finally playable in Standard. I thought that card would do some stuff. It did some stuff, but not really in Standard. But yeah, I think Spider-Woman could be great with this, and it might even perhaps make Shrike Force playable, but I think there's probably too many decent 3-drops, like what the Kite Sail card, the blue guy that turns one of your opponent's creatures into a treasure when he comes into play. That guy's only 2 mana with a Momo, so that's crazy too. It's just like, look at all the flyers you can do stuff with the Momo. And so far, again, it's been kind of tough building the deck because all the builds feel good. But in any case, man, Momo looks like it might be our first deck of the season so far. It is winning the Patreon poll, but not by too many votes. You could still affect the ballot if you go ahead and get in there. But Momo is winning for the time being, and if I have to present this deck first, I'll feel pretty good about that. This deck has been sick so far, and I imagine once we really get it hammered out, it's going to be amazing. So yeah, can't wait to do this deck when I do it, because eventually I will. Next is Izzet Lessons. If I'm going to put allies on the list, I should probably put the other mechanic in the set on the list. So let's do a Lessons deck. But the way this one came out, it's very budgety. One of the only actual rares in the not mana base was Sokka Bowl Boomeranger, who's supposed to be hanging out with Marauding Mako and stuff, and fear of missing out, but he works really well in this deck too. But the actual killer in this deck turned out to be Dragonfly Swarm of all things. This kind of reminds me of like Enigma Drake or Haughty Jin or Crackling Drake. There's been a bunch of creatures like this over the years, and they just keep getting better and better in a lot of ways. You will have a lesson in your graveyard when this thing dies, usually, right? So with that in mind, it'll always at least pay you back a card and replace itself, but sometimes it'll just be like a 9 power guy flying over. That's usually good enough to end a game or two here and there. You've got a lesson that can protect it in the octopus form, which is a sick little magic card, especially when it puts a lesson in your yard. But you've got a lot of good lessons in this set, man. You've got the new shock legend. You've got the new bounce spell lesson, I should say. The new bounce spell lesson. And those are pretty serviceable in this deck. And apart from that, you've got really good stuff. You've got the 2 mana thing that does 2 damage plus a damage for each lesson in your graveyard. That's pretty crazy. And then the granddaddy of them all, you've got Accumulated Wisdom, which has never not drawn me 3 cards for 2 mana and instant speed when I'm playing this deck. Even stuff like, Abandoned Attachments has been really good in this thing for getting lessons into your graveyard and churning through your deck. So I do think there might be something to this budget deck, but I'm not really sure exactly how to make it not a budget deck. I did play against somebody in the arena earlier that was playing Izzet Lessons and then hit me with Wan Shi Tong at the top of the curve, and I was like, oh yeah, that could be good. It beat me, so I guess that's pretty all right. But either way, so far this is like a $50 little budget deck, and I don't know that I'd have it any other way. It's been really fun playing it like that. And finally, an Azorius Aang Tempo deck, which is probably the most serious man deck on the entire list. I would say that all of these decks can do some work in Standard, but if I had to pick one to go to like a PTQ with, and I was restricted to just these decks, it would probably be this one. So far, Blue-Black Tempo has been the tempo deck in Standard for a while, but when you consider the actual black cards in the deck, the only one that's really truly great is Kaito. You've got good removal and stuff like that as well, and some decent sideboard cards. You got Duress and stuff in there, but for the most part, what do you actually lose for dropping black and picking white up to play Aang instead? You've got some pretty decent removal and some good creatures in white as well, like Aven Interrupter, which is kind of redundant with Aang, but it's kind of redundancy you like. Apart from that, most of the good cards in your deck are blue anyway. You got Enduring Curiosity in there. You got Flood Pit's Drowner. I mean, again, this is going to look like a knockoff Dimir deck that just has the best 3-drop in Standard in Aang. Deck even gets to play some really good removal and tempo in the 1-drop slot. You got Into the Flood Maw, which is the best bounce spell ever printed, and then I guess you also get Seam Rip if you want another good cheap piece of removal against the aggro decks. But there's a lot of stuff that blue-white tempo could do right now, and if you needed another reason to play white, I think Seam Rip is a pretty decent reason. But anyway, man, yeah, I think that Aang's got a lot going for it right now. There are more flash creatures than I've mentioned just in this video, but even if all I mention is Curiosity, Flood Pit's Drowner, and Aang, I think that that's a pretty good core for an Azorius tempo deck right now, and it might convince you to take the swamps out of your deck and add plains. Now, that is not quite all of the decks that I'm building in Avatar Standard. I got a couple of things up my sleeve apart from this, and I guess I'm trying to build the 4-color Avatar Aang thing. But I'm pretty sure this card kind of sucks. I don't know if you can do the thing where you flip it over, but so far I think the best part of the 4-color Aang is just the front face is really good. Whenever it attacks, draw a card and add 2 mana that's all right by itself. You don't have to flip it over, but maybe we'll get a build going, cooking with that at some point. But it turns out that you have to play pretty bad cards in your deck if you actually intend on flipping it over. But we'll make it happen. Either way, like I said, I got a couple of other things up my sleeve, and this Thursday I should be streaming with the Cat Gator deck. I can't wait to mess around with that thing, man. I didn't get really to play with it much today, and I've already built it 2 different ways. Like one way that has like Villainous Wrath in it and like almost no creatures, and another way that has a ton of creatures. And I'm pretty sure the way with a ton of creatures is better, but I'm still more excited about the Villainous Wrath build. So we'll see what happens with that on stream. Come to stream. It's twitch.tv/spmtgdev. I'll leave a link down there in the description. We'll get started streaming this week at about 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, maybe slightly earlier. All depends on how I feel. But in any case, that's all the decks that I'm building, save for a couple that I'm keeping under my shirt for just this second in Avatar Standard. So again, let me know in the comments, which of these you'd like to see more, what other decks that I didn't mention you'd like to see, because those will go on the docket. I guarantee you. I need some ideas. I like ideas, but in any case, again, if you want to, you can go over to the Patreon. Just $1 a month is all it takes to vote on every single deck that you've seen in this video. If you'd rather see 1 or 2 of them more than the others, this is your chance to make sure that you can influence my decision in that direction. But in any case, y'all, that's all I've got for this one. That is Alski Kowalski. So just do the YouTube stuff on your way out. Make sure you hit the button shaped a bit like a thumb. Wouldn't it be weird if it had never been a thumb this whole time? The like button wasn't a thumb. It was something completely different. I was like, it kind of looks like a thumb. And people are like, what are you talking about? Yes, that would be weird. Anyway, you can subscribe to the channel. We've got like 138,000 subs right now, trying to truck it along to 150K. Help us get there. And of course, check out the Patreon, but I've basically already given you my pitch. $1 a month is all it takes. Nothing else in the world costs $1. I offer you power. Everyone else offers you a cheeseburger for $3. I offer you power for $1. Join the Patreon. But anyway, that's all I've got for this one. That is Itzky Lewitsky. So I am Dev from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.